Welcome to Goodfellas History. I'm your host, Nick.
I'm Garrett.
And I'm Davis.
And today we're going to talk about Redemptionism, or aka the history of the lost cause myth. How the myth morphed over time, its historic consequences, and its contribution to the rise of Trumpism. So, where does this all begin? It begins at the end of the United States Civil War. Abraham Lincoln's long-term goal was to basically bring the South back into the North while radically reconstructing its economy to basically be more like that of the Midwest and the northeastern states. This didn't really happen because he was assassinated. At the end of the day, the radical Republicans tried to do a reconstruction project, but it really didn't happen. And since then, Reconstruction has been portrayed as the northern portrayal of poor white people and the freemen in the South. Freemen being the freed African-American peoples.
Okay.
This also opened the door for the rise of the Klan. So, who really made up of the Ku Klux Klan? And this is a picture of the founder of the Ku Klux Klan, I believe is John Bedford Forrest. He was a cavalry commander in the South during the Civil War. But who made up the KKK?
Well, obviously white people.
Yeah, it was definitely white people.
Yeah.
Christians. I mean, obviously, and I don't mean that like as in all Christians, obviously, but
Yeah.
it was a very religious kind of thing.
Yes, it was a very far-right, religious group.
It was a
Yeah.
cult.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a cult. But who really made up of it? So oftentimes, even in Hollywood depictions, the KKK is made up of the yeoman southerner. Y'all know the yeoman southerner? That,
Nope.
you know, the salt of the earth type that just works hard.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
That's the yeoman southerner. The tough southerner who went off to fight a war with no boots on and just his rifle. That's the yeoman southern fable, and that's kind of how the KKK was sold. But the real members of the KKK were people like Mr. Bedford Forrest here, a very wealthy former plantation.
Yeah, I was going to say, they were made up of a lot of, rich people.
People who could afford horses, you know, and it was for the most part made up of, you know, the local gentry and their hired guns. So, a good way to describe these guys as terrorists. In many ways, they were a proto-fascist group in the South. Because if you go through Umberto Eco's 14 points, God, is it really close to hit the nail on the head on every single point of the KKK.
True.
But also equally important, who was targeted? Obviously free slaves.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
But also
obviously black people.
Any white people who were caught, quote unquote, miscegenating with the black community. Any merchants trying to invest in the black community. The Jewish community was targeted.
And they also target the Catholic community too.
Yep, the Catholic community. So Irish people. You know, mostly Irish and German who were Catholics. But and Northerners, anybody who was not of a certain Southern stock. And the political outcome of that was basically a reign of terror in the South that would last and would come and go, depending on the fortunes of the political class that ruled the South. This was basically the way it was underneath Andrew Johnson, the vice president of Lincoln, who eventually became the president when Lincoln was assassinated. And it was under Johnson's administration that the Klan was able to really get its teeth sunk into, its roots sunk into the soil of the South.
Yeah.
Under Grant's administration, and Grant is a mixed bag, Reconstruction's war with Redemptionism. So Grant actually saw this as a threat. And so he actually sent U.S. troops into the South to combat the Klan. Like, he sent literal U.S. soldiers went in, and there were actual firefights between the Klan and U.S. troops.
Okay, so I mean, at least action was taken.
And during his time, the voting rights and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment had ensured were enforced. So up front, it seems pretty cool, pretty base guy. Problems. Grant was a political novice, and his administration was packed with a lot of corrupt Republicans, many of whom actually were ironically holdovers from the Lincoln administration. And so, as base as this was, he really did not want to go any further in the South. He did not want to press the economic issues to resolve. And it's under Grant's administration that the issues with the Native Americans begins to come to a head, because the chief of his Bureau of Indian Affairs was an incredibly corrupt dude who would literally be selling off U.S. military munitions under the table to the very same native tribes that he was policing.
So not based.
And with that money, he was also able to purchase liquor to also send out west. I mean, not so based. Not so based. Pretty corrupt. Base part, he basically protected voting rights in the South, but not so based with everything else. So, at the end of the day, Grant's administration is not remembered as that much of a success, and is seen as, in many ways, the final nail in the coffin of Reconstruction. Because after Grant, there's this major, well, even during the end of Grant's administration, there's a major recession that hits the nation. And, Reconstruction is put on the back burner and is never retouched. Lynching, rape, and threats. Re-enslavement of the black community, the rise of the Klan. So, in this kind of environment, guess what the kind of work freedmen were able to find? They were able to find work working on the same plot of land that the ancestors worked on, but now they were sharecroppers.
Yep.
And subsistence farmers. And the Klan, in many ways, was used as the boot on their neck to keep them in line. So, this leads to a really kind of not so bad moment. The rise of populism. Now, we've talked about this, right?
Yes, we did.
The White Southern Farmers Alliance and the Negro Southern Farmers Alliance, or the Colored Farmers Alliance. In the 1880s and the 1890s, the populists fought back. Through fusion, they challenged the Bourbon aristocracy and challenged the power of the Klan. But more importantly, they challenged the narrative of the yeoman Southerner, protecting the South from Northern aggression. Now, it's really important that I put this lost cause myth as the foundation of Redemptionism. So, Redemptionism is this idea that the Southerners needed to redeem the South from Northern corruption.
Yeah.
That the antebellum period in the South was actually this idyllic period that needed to be emulated. And unfortunately, not such a based concept. And so Redemptionism is going to play a key part in this idea that the white Southerners, or whiteness, needs to redeem itself from its corruption. This is going to metamorphose over time, but really important, getting to the populists. Okay? Now, the populists were not all based, but they did want to desegregate economic issues, which was pretty based, seeing as nobody had really talked about doing that before. But this made them a threat. The Southern establishment strikes back. Anti-black politics comes to the forefront once again, and you get shit like this being put out in newspapers.
Oh my god.
Irish Iberian, Anglo-Teutonic, and then just Negro, unfortunately. And I love how they gave this guy fucking a necklace. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, I was about to say. I was like, oh my.
Anti-black politics comes to the forefront. So before, this was kind of tongue-in-cheek. It wasn't as prevalent in the dialogue of politics. But the issue of keeping the black savage, their quote them, that's what they said, away from the proper society and keeping such unprincipled white people, such as the Irish Iberian, away from the Anglo-Teutonic women was believed to be really important. But this is also really important. I want you guys to pay attention to this. Pseudo-race science enters politics for the first time, too.
Oh, boy.
And how this is tied to Nazism in the United States. How is it tied to Nazism, Garrett? Davis?
Well, I mean, Nazism
Because
still
that's
relies on like a lot of pseudoscience
A
to
lot
this
of
day.
shit like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What this is called eugenics. This is the idea that your genetic makeup is a determinate factor in your character and your abilities. Okay?
Yeah.
And how this really brought a whole new dimension to racism, I'll tell you that right now, because now it's not, oh, these are just uncivilized thralls that, don't know how to read and write. It's now they are genetically predisposed to being X. So in many ways, you could say this is the orcification of black people in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I want you all to think about, Lovecraft and his fish people. It's shit like that. And this is right around when Lovecraft was becoming aware as a human being that this was starting to get enforced.
Yeah.
So basically, we already talked about the fact that the South crushed the populists. A whole new wave of terror happened, and it was re-entrenched.
I just love how there are people out there that think as soon as like slavery ended, everything was like so peachy and keen and
like a lot of the time. Like a lot of the time after you hear about how like this when the Civil War ended, it's like we entered just like this idyllic like timeline.
Yeah.
So
racism apparently ended.
I want to read this down here. The Iberians are believed to have their origins been originally an African race who thousands of years ago spread through the Spain over Western Europe. Their remains are found in burrows and burying places in sun-dry parts of these countries. The skulls are low Protheanus type.
What the
They
hell?
came to Ireland and mixed with the natives of southern and west, who themselves are supposedly been of a low type of descendants of savages of the Stone Age, who, in consequence of innovation from the rest of the world, have never been outcompeted in the healthy struggle of life, and thus made way accordingly to the law of nature for superior races.
Wow. I mean, they're not wrong when they say they have their origins in Africa, but we all have our origins in
I'd
Africa.
say it's a good majority, but...
Yeah.
Everybody. Whew. Okay, so this leads to the rise of the Second Clan. So as the Bourbon Democrats crushed the populists and really entrenched themselves, the need and necessity of the Klan went down. And the Klan really just became a good old boys group. This is the rise of the Second Clan. And how the Ku Klux Klan became all-American. And eugenics has a huge part to play in this. Eugenics is the study of agencies under social control that improve or impair the racial qualities of future generations, either physically or mentally. And this is from Truman State University. So, what led to the rise of the new Klan and its fun eugenics and Nazi talking points? Well, during this period of time, urbanism is beginning to take place, and all the fun things like jazz and the miscegenation that goes along with that. And it's more of a response to the shock of the new. But we can blame redneck hayseeds all we want, and there is certainly plenty of moralism that's tied into this. But academia fell in love with race science, social Darwinism, and eugenics. Man, this shit was pumped out, as you could tell, because this was in a school.
Yikes!
Academia fell in love with this shit, so virtually everywhere this stuff was being pressed. So, you guys got any questions so far?
No, I mean, I kind of I knew like the general like timeline for a lot of this stuff, or like just like the general like agendas that were put forth by the Klan and whatnot. But this is more like in depth on that. But so far, it makes sense.
So this also is really important because this is the time when the Ku Klux Klan became Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The Ku Klux Klan became a predominantly Republican, urban group. Now, this seems really strange, but what it was the urban elite, the old guard in the north, northeast, and the west, not liking the changes that were happening in society, all this miscegenation, Catholicism, and Jewishism. This is really when the Klan becomes the kind of Klan that we think of today. It's more of a social group, and I want to tell you all right now, the Ku Klux Klan was big in the 1920s. There were parades they would put on, air shows they would put on. This was a association to be a part of. This is when the Ku Klux Klan was its largest. And it's really important, though, is the Ku Klux Klan expanding to become an all-American ideology means that the myth of the lost cause, this bullshit, gets spread and is allowed to germinate throughout the country. So the yeoman Southern fable turns into the yeoman white fable. The white people being kept down.
Ugh.
So, this is the Klan until the 1930s.
Yeah.
Then something crazy happens. Roosevelt gets elected. The New Deal happens. And this is really the beginning of the next era of the Civil Rights Movement. It's not an exact match, but it is in many ways a response to this insane BS. And I want you all to realize that a lot of the concerns that the Second Klan had also could be applied to economic issues. These are the same kind of people who said that we needed to be on a gold standard. Because academia, which fell in love with race science, social Darwinism, eugenics, also agreed with, the gold standard and all those fun economic practices that were designed to purge and cull the weak from our society. So, basically, the war on Jim Crow. I really like this. Human progress never rolls on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through tireless effort and persistent work. I love that.
Yeah.
Good quote, yeah.
And I love the source, Planned Parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so
really pulling out all the stops there.
Yeah.
So the New Deal programs are not great for African Americans. But they are definitely better than what they had.
Yeah.
And under the New Deal, African Americans actually I believe they saw somewhere between 40 to 50% increase in wages over this period of time. Now, a lot of this is due to the fact that there's a rise of a socialist liberal coalition. We've already talked about this as well when I talked about populism. It was the socialists and the liberals that really pushed this idea of bringing the African American community into the Democratic Party. And it's the socialists and liberals that are the closest allies to MLK and his campaigns. It was the socialists and liberals that pushed for the Civil Rights Act, even though the socialists by that time had been purged by the Red Scare. Enough of their ideology and principles were able to fasten onto the coalition that it maintained. But inevitably this leads to a racist crusade, a return to form. Oh, these guys.
Oh, no.
So the Republican
we
Party
go.
is on the ropes for a long time, and they really need something as a wedge issue to get people to vote for them. Now, y'all know who these people are?
I know. I see Nixon there in the top
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah,
I'm not
no
sure
Nixon.
the person on the left is.
Oh, this is a really important figure.
That's the one I cannot recognize at all.
This is George Wallace. He was the
Oh.
governor of Alabama.
Yeah, okay.
A figure that has definitely been whitewashed from our history. This was the man that ran against Johnson. And people were worried that he was going to actually cost Johnson the vote. Didn't happen because Johnson was just really popular in the South. But he also ran against Hubert Humphrey. And he was really good friends with this fellow over here named Richard Nixon. Now, Wallace was an out-and-about racist.
Yeah.
And was the face of the Democratic Party establishment of the South. So he's a bourbon Democrat. You know what the media called him when he ran?
Oh, God. What?
They called him a populist.
Ugh.
Oof.
No.
Oof.
So, this leads to the rise of the arch-segregationalists. George Wallace really kind of taught everybody else what not to do. So if you notice, Nixon's war on poor people and people of color were his quote-unquote enemies. But he never really said much. He kind of dog-whistled more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And as with those dog whistles, he was able to put just a small enough wedge inside the vote to get people to come vote for him. And this is at the same time that the Democratic Party is doing its damnedest to destroy the New Deal coalition. So, yeah, Richard Nixon wins. And he wins big. Let's also understand that some of the people that he saw as his enemies were poor white people and poor people of color. They were his antagonists. He didn't want anything to do with them.
You can't whip this dick.
Basically.
That was actually a slogan of his.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
So, this also leads to Slick Ronald Reagan and his dog whistling. Have you ever heard the term welfare queen?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan.
You hear it still to this day on Fox.
Yep.
Oh. This is the rebirth of Redemptionism in the 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And it's found its place back where it always belonged, in the Republican Party. And so the war on drugs and the rise of the new right has a lot to do with Redemptionism. This idea that you need to save the Republic from corruption. From those people who are dangerous. Those poor, ignorant folk that need to be kept in line. And
wait, so you're telling me that Republicans aren't the same Republicans as Lincoln?
Oh, yes. Yes.
But Donald Trump said that Lincoln was a Republican.
Yeah, and
Crazy.
welfare queens.
I know, but some
and
people
lazy.
don't believe that, apparently.
Yeah,
So-
no, that's been a new talking point where well, not
Yeah.
new, but it's resurfaced in that
'cause it's
they're like,
lazy.
no, the Republican
Yeah,
Party
the
used
Republicans freed the slaves. How could they be racist?
I don't know.
Even though it's been a long time, a lot can change.
to be. Yeah,
Well-
political parties shift crazy enough.
Yeah,
Welfare queens and lazy folk.
yeah.
And you wonder who the icons of that and who they were actually talking about when they talk about welfare queens. You know, the media does a really good job of actually kind of helping them with that because, I believe it was they did a report that somewhere around 92% of the time when the word welfare queen was used, it's usually a black mother that they put up there. Even
Yeah.
though most of the women that benefited from these welfare programs were white.
Yeah.
Anyway. And we
Oh
got
my
old Billy
God.
Clinton. And Bill Clinton really had an opportunity to really kind of nip this in the bud, but he didn't.
Nope,
he
he did
campaigned on a war on welfare.
not.
How the Southern Democrats fell into and out of power. So Bill Clinton was a Southern Democrat, and he was in charge of the Democratic Leadership Council, the DLC. And yeah, he was called Slick Willie for a reason. he and the DLC came into power and prominence inside the Democratic Party in the late 80s, early 90s, got elected, and yeah, they spent the next, 4 or 5 years really giving it to their welfare constituents.
Yep.
And Clintonism's rise of power into the Democratic Party was basically the death knell of the leftist liberal wing of the Democratic Party. It really was purged out of power. And from Bill Clinton's administration, we get the crime bill and the rise of the new Jim Crow.
3 strikes, you're out.
Basically. Now, everything lousy wasn't necessarily Bill Clinton's fault, but he definitely was the presider over a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So.
Oh my God.
Hope and change. The rise of the new left, Obama's presidency, and a psychobilly freakout of the right wing. So, everything seemed to go honky-dory until the recession hit. And then Barack Obama got elected, because Barack Obama ran on hope and change, and he also ran on some pretty basic Democratic talking points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you guys were old enough to remember a lot of this, but I
remember this.
I've seen clips of this shit.
So, yeah, pretty obvious racism, right?
Yep.
So the psychobilly freakout of the right wing. The return of the old caricatures depicting people of color. AOC and various other prominent women of color have been witch doctorified and demonized. I really love the birth certificate one.
Yeah, prove it.
Mm-hmm.
God, yeah, you still hear that sometimes. Oh my word.
You do, and it's just crazy how you had people like Donald Trump going on The View and talking about it.
Mm-hmm. And then let's just think of how he's portrayed. Big ears, all this, the big nose, big ears.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just go back to this picture right here.
Yeah.
You see something similar?
Oh, yes.
Yep, just a little more modern.
Mm-hmm. And so,
oh.
Black people are once again demonized. Now, I can say that they've been demonized for some time, but the old caricatures come back. So, they get a second run, I guess. The right wing freaks out. And this is the beginning of the America got more racist once Barack Obama became president.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, but framing it in a way that it's Obama's fault.
Yep.
Which is crazy. The first black president ever, you're going to blame him for racism.
Yeah, it's really easy to weaponize things like that. It's unfortunate.
Yep.
And so this is the rise of the Tea Party games and the Donald. So the birth certificate shit, the witch doctor shit, the Joker. God knows how many times I saw this goddamn sign.
Yeah, I was going to say, that one was really common.
But, inevitably, this led to the rise of the Donald, who became prominent with this birth certificate bullshit. And it's almost as if the Tea Party and the Donald and the rise of this new fascist bullshit has something to do with the lost cause. Now, y'all know what Donald Trump's message for the country was. It's about making America
great again.
As if redeeming America from its sins.
And
we all know that...
Good old days.
Barack Obama was a demon, a witch doctor, a Muslim. I mean, what else?
He was called an Arab.
An Arab.
Mm-hmm.
So he...
I heard the word terrorist used a few times, too.
Yep.
So...
Muslim.
Mm-hmm. He's foreign. He's stained the character of this noble nation.
Ugh.
But fortunately, this time around, the left... We woke up.
Yeah.
We woke up. The left woke up. We got to witness this firsthand. And the rise of the Donald really pissed us off.
Yep.
BLM, Bernie, and the squad. I think that this is the part where we're not going to take it. Starts, blaring.
Yeah.
So this time around, the leftists actually are able to fight back, unlike what happened in the 80s and 90s.
True.
Yeah.
Donald Trump got elected, but they didn't give him an inch. Black Lives Matter is now a full-thrown thing. The squad is made up of women of color, the most prominent women of color in American history.
Yep.
And we got the burn.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean, we had him before, obviously, but he definitely
He
became
shot
more
up more.
mainstream. Yeah,
The most
for
important
sure.
thing that he gave us is this new coalition.
Yeah.
And with this new coalition, we're able to challenge this bullshit of redemptionism.
Yeah.
Fascism, redemptionism. Trumpism, and the old-time fascist talking points. Now, I already talked about American America great again, but can we think of other things Donald Trump has said that kind of sound like they belong in the 1880s?
Oh my gosh.
Mexicans are rapists, and
yeah, they're not sending their
bringing
best
crime into our country, but some are good people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not sending us their best.
Yeah.
What else?
You know,
He could
honestly,
shoot
this
a person on Fifth Avenue and not get charged.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorites actually didn't involve people of color, but it was disabled when he made fun of the reporter.
Mm-hmm.
That one
And
was.
people defended that, like,
Mm-hmm.
so blatant.
I have an uncle who has Tourette's, and he was defending that, and I was like, brother.
Shit.
I was like, what on earth?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
He's their fash daddy, okay? They like their fash daddy.
And I would also say, like, that time he tweeted a video where in the first 10 seconds someone screams white power, and when people got mad, they took it down and claimed that Trump didn't know that that was in there.
Yeah.
So feigning ignorance to cover up racism.
Or when he said that he'll pay for the guy's legal, fees to hit the other dude in the crowd.
Yep. And
So-
you had one more thing. They were talking about Ilhan Omar, and the crowd chanted "send her back," and he just stood there for like a good 10 plus seconds before
Just
saying
soaking it in, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's almost as
Many
if
examples.
we had like a history of this shit.
Yeah. Ugh.
Open racism in the streets. But what is Trump's loss, and what does it mean? It means that, fortunately, we might be turning a corner here when it comes to this redemption bullshit.
Yeah.
But the real question is, how can we destroy redemptionism once and for all?
Well, I think part of it comes down to rhetoric, because what's really something we need to analyze here is how quickly the far right and people that fall into this and whatnot are able to turn rhetoric that we're using against us.
Yeah.
They're really quick to flip the script on a lot of things.
So I want y'all to take in consideration the Klan became all-American.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
what does that mean? It means that it was a red, white, and blue Klan.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason why the online right was able to get so many people on board with this is that the Stars and Stripes, forever are being blared out, 24/7. They know what they're talking about. They believe in what they're talking about. They're dedicated.
Yeah.
But under this period, under these two fellows here, the Democratic Party really didn't have much of a talking point. They weren't willing to push back.
Yeah.
And we now do, because we see the issues.
Uh-huh.
The left wing is not interested in ignoring the problems, if you will.
Yeah.
So Trump's loss, and what does it mean? It means a lot, actually. The fact that he lost, and he lost pretty big. I mean, the reality is that Donald Trump was not popular. Unlike these fellers.
Yeah.
These fellers were really popular. And they were not just popular in the South, they were popular across the country.
Yeah.
I do want to push back a little on this, though. I think part of that comes into the fact that Trump used a lot more divisive language as well. He was far more open, I feel, in a lot of his hatred for groups.
Well, George Wallace.
True, but George Wallace was not as popular as Nixon.
I do think that Nixon and Reagan tried to hide it a little bit better.
Yeah.
They hid it better. But George Wallace, let me tell you what, Davis, I'm going to tell you right now. George Wallace, had he not been almost assassinated in 76, he might have been the Democratic nominee.
Well, fair point there.
Yeah.
And going up against Ford.
Yeah.
We might have
Fair point.
We might have gotten a President Wallace.
Oh,
Oof.
Jesus. Well, and I do think, too, that Trump, he really attacked our democracy. And so
Yeah.
I do think that played a big role because, as far as I know, Nixon and Reagan didn't outright say that this is going to be the most corrupt election in history. Don't use mail-in ballots. Oh, my God. Everyone and their cat is going to vote. Like,
attack a lot of the social institutions like that are put into place. Yeah.
Terrorism and proto-fascism rise in the South. It's just it's the same shit.
Yep.
Same shit, different stink.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way I see it is the way we destroy redemptionism, and this is one of the reasons why that CRT crap is being pressed right now, is in reality, this is a dying ideology.
Yep.
And a lot of it is just due to the fact that it hasn't delivered anything.
Yeah.
It's a rhetoric. It's a rhetorical point. Donald Trump actually believed this shit, but like most of the people use this redemptionism as a cynical ploy to get really angry, really pissed off, racist people to come out to vote for them.
Yep.
So, one way of destroying redemptionism is giving people a better deal. You know? This seems so much better in the long run than this.
Yeah.
So, offering a better deal and sticking to your guns might actually be enough to put this in the grave. Y'all have any closing thoughts?
Kind of, yeah. I feel like, as I was saying a little bit, in how we destroy redemptionism is a lot of rhetoric, but I also feel like it's messaging. Because really, at the end of the day, if you look at what redemptionism and a lot of like these more fascist talking points point to, they point to sort of like a different world in that what they can offer, and it's a lot more selective than what I think a lot of left-wing populism can offer. I think we really need to hammer on messaging and like, really like we're giving people like an option outside of what they're currently seeing.
So the reality is, when the redemptionists, the fascists, or whatever we want to call them, come out and say, you are going through a really bad time now, aren't you? Yeah, these people actually really are going through a really bad time. And so the reality is there is economic realities to this. But I'm also going to point out the fact that most of these folks don't really need to be convinced.
True.
Because this has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
A long time. And reality is that Donald Trump's the first out-and-out racist candidate for the Republican Party in a long time. And he excited a part of that base that had not been excited in some time.
That's true. He has a very fervent support still in that base.
And the reality
his reinstatement date just passed, and obviously he's not president.
Well, his loss means something, because that portion of the vote used to be a lot flipping bigger.
That's true.
And I also want to say, like, kind of for my closing argument, is why education is so important. Because I really do think that Donald Trump was able to capitalize on people just not, like, believing. I feel like, generally speaking, if you're not as educated, you're more susceptible to conspiracy theories. And so he really was able to capitalize on it. And, now it's just getting to a point where, it's just people aren't living in reality, and they're still thinking that Trump somehow has a plan to arrest everybody else in power and then retake the presidency. And we see this demonization of our education systems where people are pulling their kids out of public school because, of whatever reason, and then homeschooling them. And I just...
I was going to say...
It's still part of that lost cause myth.
Yeah.
So...
And Garrett, I was going to say, you want to know who agrees with you on that? No. The Republican Party. Remember, who was Donald Trump's education who was in charge of education. It was like Betsy, right? Betsy DeVos.
Betsy DeVos.
Yep,
Yeah.
and she was aggressively against a lot of like public education things.
Yeah.
Aggressively against, and there's a reason for it.
Hmm.
Yeah. This is an
But you're saying they agree with me?
I'm saying they agree that on like that education like
Oh yeah, I
changes
see what you're-
outcomes.
Okay. Yeah, I see
no,
what
I'm
you're
not saying that they
We have
agree that
to-
we should have education. I'm saying
Okay,
they
okay.
agree that education will alter their viewpoints.
Oh yeah, totally. They know that education,
Mm-hmm.
like when people become more educated. I mean, you hear it all the time, like college makes people more liberal.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like a point that they, always throw out there. And it's like, well, I mean, if education skews more left, I don't really know what to tell you. I feel like that's
there's an indicator.
yeah. And so yeah, I get what you're saying. Sorry, I was a little confused
No.
there.
I should have clarified a little bit on that too. So
Yeah.
that's totally fair.
So,
But that's my thought.
so, in closing, this has been Goodfellas History. If you liked what you saw and what you heard, please like, comment, and subscribe down below. And as always, have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Peace.